I can record to this computer. Yeah,
Cool.
cool. Um, I need to go off of Zappa. Was I on this microphone or was I on my computer mic in our last thing?
I don't remember.
Did it sound the same?
You sound like you're coming over through Zoom. So, I mean, that's kind of hard to tell for me.
Sure. Admit, Brian. Are you? There we go. Merge.
Okay.
There we go. And we're back. All right. I will intro this. It is funny how my computer chugs once I start getting this much shit going. Well, it's like I get Logic going and I get Zoom going and it's like this is a lot, Chris. You're doing a lot to me right now. Uh yeah.
Step up.
I know. I'm like you're dogging here.
This is not as far as the week.
The pups are dogging it. All right.
Find
Notes.
your notes again. Do I sound? I don't sound like a chipmunk, do I?
You don't sound like a chipmunk. You do not have the chipmunk thing.
Hmm?
Sometimes I do.
Chris, you're coming in choppy.
Yeah, no,
It's
I'm
his
gonna
internet
be
now.
yeah, no, it's gonna be like that until I get the notes up and like things get stable again. But I can't see my slate right now, so I can't do anything until this actually. There we go. Thank you. I can't. Yeah, I couldn't do anything. Now I'm gonna let my computer settle down.
Have a calm breath.
We're not doing anything. We're not clicking on anything. We're just embracing the tranquility of solitude.
Yeah, there you go.
It's better. It's better.
Yeah. No. I'm not. I didn't. I don't need to move anything. I think I've gotten basically to like a click-free thing. All I have to do now is occasionally scroll. So we're back. I'm gonna intro this and get us in.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to part 2 of episode. This is 508. This is, I guess, the video feed as well for the Patreon side. Hopefully you enjoyed the part about schools for the Freesiders here. That is going to also be in the final edit. And now we're going to keep serving through headlines. We got a ton of headlines here real quickly. Actually, I will show everybody what we are looking at here. Can you all see the show slate all right?
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
This is what we're working off of. Got a bunch of headlines for you all here, and then we're going to get into Ring Doorbells in just a bit. But first, continuing on here, about a third of U.S. military personnel are declining to be vaccinated. About 960,000 members of the military and its contractors have been vaccinated so far, but 33% is well below herd immunity. And what is necessary in order to keep COVID-19 out of the ranks of the military. And I don't think it's an accident that this is happening and that with the Capitol riots, a disproportionate number of people in the Capitol riots, I think it was like over 10% of people who've been charged so far are military members, and less than 1% of the country is active military or like former military. Unfortunately, a lot of this very conspiratorial right wing, don't vaccine me because I'm going to get autism or my baby's going to get autism sort of thing. Like, that stuff's very, very pervasive in the military, sadly.
I'm very interested in that because I was under the impression they didn't have much of a say in what they got vaccinated for and what they did not.
It's weird, right? Like if you go and get deployed in certain areas, and this is to your point, a cultural shift in the military. It used to just be standard. You're going to Africa, they tell you to go and meet up with the doctor, and there's a series of shots you're going to be getting for malaria and a number of other regional illnesses because your immune system's never been exposed to that before. And like every military guy always understood that, and in some cases kind of thought it was cool because they were getting access to vaccines that like we otherwise don't get normally. Like, it's fortifying your body on some level. But yeah, no, this is a cultural shift. This is clearly not the way people feel about vaccines now.
I can just say it. I can ask you, since you know me. Do I seem any different? Do I have a better Wi-Fi signal because of the 5G? Because I've had my second dose, and
Yeah,
I
so
think I'm okay.
Lindsay is now fully vaccinated. I forgot to get that in. We wouldn't have had time. But so, like, explain to us what the vaccination process was like for you.
Dope. It was really well run. Denton County, in Texas, should be the standard for the whole country. My first dose was back on January 15th, I believe. It might have been the 14th. And they had 3,000 doses they gave out in one day at a outdoor facility near a school. So there was basically a drive-through. It took me. I was supposed to be there at 4:30, and I got there maybe 4:20.
Good time.
And yeah, nice. And then, so I got there a little early, and I literally looked at the clock because I wanted to see how long it took. 4:37, I was vaccinated.
That's dope.
And I had to wait longer afterwards in the sort of quarantine, make sure you don't have a reaction area, for 30 minutes. So it was a 45-ish minute experience, the whole thing. And so that was a month ago. And then last Friday, before all the winter weather hit, I got my second dose, which was at the Texas Motor Speedway. And I was like, well, how's this going to go? I got there at noon, and thousands of cars, probably 16 lanes of vehicles being ushered through. And it took an hour. And no, totally smooth, absolutely no hiccups. But the side effects are real when it comes to that second dose. So I just want to preach this as much as I possibly can, because someone warned me about how the second dose was going to go. And I did my second dose, like I said, at noon last Friday. Around midnight, I was playing video games and started feeling cold, but it was cold in my apartment, so I didn't know what that was, and if it was just like I need to turn on the heater. But then over the next 2 hours or so, the cold was like bone deep and chills, and then I felt the fever, and yeah, so there was fever around 99, 99.5. I had chills, I had body pain for the full 24 hours. But the chills went away after about 3 or 4 hours. I went to sleep and woke up, no chills. Body pain throughout the day. I basically rotated Advil and Tylenol every 4 hours. And once it would wear off, you could feel it. It was I've got a high tolerance for pain, but I was sitting there having a conversation with my mom at one point, and we were okay because the medicine was still kicking in. And as I was talking, like, it was wearing off, and I was just slowly drained. And it's like, I've got to go. So I'd say the most consistent thing for me was the body pain for 24 hours and fatigue for 24 hours. So get yourself some Advil and Tylenol, watch your temperature, get some electrolytes in you. But it's weird. It was like I sat there the whole time realizing I'm not really sick. I'm okay. So
yeah, right.
You were able to get through it. Anyway, that's my advice for anybody worried about the vaccine. I had Moderna. No issues besides exactly what I was told was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm over a week out now, so my Wi-Fi seems to be normal, and Bill Gates hasn't knocked on my door yet, but I'm waiting.
Yeah, well, he's getting a bunch of bad ideas though. Like I know people like him for conspiracies and stuff, but like his actual plans for global warming kind of really suck. But
That's
yeah.
what happens when you're a billionaire. It's a mixed bag of bad and
He
good.
was good at computers,
He's also good at polio.
Yeah,
vaccine.
that is true. That is true.
I'll give him that.
Lindsay, I'm curious. Whenever you went out to Texas Motor Speedway, did you travel past the area where that giant car wreck was? Because I know that
was
wasn't that like on Sunday or Monday?
I think it happened Monday morning.
Yeah.
Right.
I missed. That was
Oh, well, I'm just trying to, just
would have
find
been
someone who
weird.
can describe why it happened there and like why it was so terrible.
because
And,
I-35 is the worst.
yeah.
Well,
It's
you
a-
remember that storm from like about 10 years ago where like I-35, when it gets iced over, we don't have good resources to deal with the ice on the roads. And you have a bunch of people around here, especially truck people, who are like, ain't no ice in my way. Yeah.
It's a main vein. So what you're dealing with is I-35 is going towards, it's from Oklahoma
Mhm.
into Fort Worth and Dallas. So if you're heading towards Fort Worth, it's commuters, it's people from Oklahoma, it's truck drivers, and it's a 2 to 3 lane
It's narrower.
highway.
Yeah.
It's a major vein though, and they're trying to expand it with like toll but basically it bottlenecks. And so I've been driving on it on a normal day, no weather, and just been cruising along and like suddenly slam on my brakes sort of stuff because you go over a slight hill and there all of a
Right.
sudden traffic is backed up for an hour. So I can see it just being so much, just so many people trying to get to work that day, and
Reduced speed, reduced traction, increased car load, and it's a total. And as we talked about in the last episode, bad institutional knowledge among Texans on how to drive in snow, when to go out in snow, like bad decision making on top of all the other stuff we talked about there.
actually you're right. It was before I had, okay, so that accident happened on Thursday before I had my vaccine. That was
Okay.
there was like a brief snow day last Thursday where there was like morning snow.
Right,
I remember
right.
now. So it was just enough. That's the thing with that people, were not prepared. And the black ice is real. It is just so dangerous. I walked outside of my apartment and I could see a slick spot on the ground just because of the angle I was looking at. But if you were like dead on it, you wouldn't have noticed it was any different.
I just recall when I lived in Denton that there were segments of 35 West that were these blind hills that if you didn't know about them, you better be ready for them. And that was without ice.
Right.
Yeah. There's just the bottlenecking thing, and it
Yeah.
bottlenecks over a hill, and you have no visibility to see them. Pinging along here, coronavirus pandemic has cut the life expectancy in the U.S. by an entire year in the first half of 2020, the largest drop since World War II. Overall, Americans can now expect to live 77.8 years on average, similar to what it was in 2006. Life expectancy in the black population, however, declined by 2.7 years, down to 72 years. So already have bad outcomes. And as we've been hearing for the last couple of years, or for the last year or so here, this has been disproportionately affecting black and brown communities, particularly black communities. And I think a lot of that is because of a higher prevalence of diabetes and how COVID is very much a blood flow sort of issue. CDC noted that data only reflects death that occurred during the first 6 months of 2020, and thus is actually kind of the smaller part of the picture from the latter half of the year. So we're not going to have a complete picture of just how bad things got until some point this year.
So this is, I kind of don't like that the 1 year figure is what everyone is focusing on, because if part of the population is closer to 3 years, I would rather it be said something to the fact that most of you lost about 3 months and some of you lost 3 years. And let's figure out why.
Yeah.
Let's figure out why there's a spectrum here.
I think there is going to be, especially as vaccines get more ubiquitous, a real impulse. And part of this is coming from the Biden administration. Part of this was coming from Trump too. This return to normalcy thing. Because Trump was almost sort of selling return to normalcy as well. It was like the most ham-handed, like cloven hoof fist way of forcing return to normalcy. But like it was this idea of just pretend everything's fine. It's going to go away like a miracle. Remember that phrase? I think there's going to be a real impulse during this year, and this is why I was concerned about schools in the first segment here, that once we can get some vaccines out And once we can get schools open, we can act like everything's normal. And the people who are going to be the real victim of that are people like, for example, in the black community who are really already getting disproportionately affected by this and are going to have longer wait times to getting to vaccines as well.
And we still don't.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and we still don't know like the full long-term effects of a lot of this. So if they're already disproportionately affected by being infected, what is the effect of the infection long-term?
Because COVID is a blood flow thing. Like as much as we kind of think, like, you know, I mean, we remember just a flu, and I know pretty much everyone who listens to this show is not of the belief that it's, quote, just the flu or whatever. But the problem with that framing that's much more subtle is that it did sort of lead us to believe on some level it's kind of like an upper respiratory infection thing. And while COVID does manifest in some serious upper respiratory infections, and as Lindsay just described, getting vaccinated, it manifests in fever and cold and chills and things that we associate with upper respiratory. A big part of this, like if you look up COVID fingers or COVID toes or any of that sort of stuff, it's about blood flow. And so when that ports onto, like, let's say your family's got a history of diabetes, that could be really, really disastrous. And to Lindsay's point, it's not necessarily going to show up, certainly not in the first 6 months snapshot, but it's not necessarily going to show up in this next snapshot, which is also going to look pretty bleak. It's something that's going to take a while to get to.
Is there any data on how much of this is physiology and how much of this is certain groups of people are more often essential workers?
Hey, that's an excellent point because it's probably both.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when we're looking at this 2.7 number, I've talked about physiology, but like, no, I think this is intersectional, right? Like, I do think there's physiological components. Some families are just more prone to diabetes than others. And, you know, also some families are more prone to sickle cell anemia than others. And there is a bit of a geographical tracking with some of that stuff. But I think to your point, Brian, black and brown people are very often the people we have been labeling as essential workers and leaving on the front lines, and they weren't the first people to get the vaccines. And they've been going and being in tremendous exposure risks with oftentimes not the safest possible conditions. And so, yeah, like I think the other thing we're sort of seeing in these numbers, and to your point, it's hard to parse out what's what, but I think it's there, is that poor people are getting more disproportionately affected by this. It's like what they used to say about Vietnam, where it was a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. COVID is a rich man's war and it's a poor person's fight.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking about it because I believe Vietnam was also disproportionately affecting Black people as well. They are more drafted and everything. It's rough. I mean, I felt incredibly. I was literally dealing with chills and fever at like 2-3 in the morning and feeling overwhelmed with like gratitude that I was in that position. Like I got teary because I felt so grateful that I had that option. You know, I have asthma and pre-existing conditions, and so I was able to get this and put this behind me, and my parents have been vaccinated and they're getting their second dose tomorrow. So this chapter gets to end for me, but for a lot of people, that's not an option. I've been able to work from home for a year. You know, that's incredibly, incredibly depressing. And I don't know, maybe we need to rethink how we're vaccinating. And I don't know. Nobody asks me.
No, I still have a problem with this. Much like the schools thing, there was this logic that came out that everyone just sort of said axiomatically, which is that old people need the vaccine first. And so then you start seeing these like news articles of like people who are 100 years old getting the vaccine. And I'm going like, don't get me wrong. It's touching to see this person, you know, still trucking at 100, but like,
it probably should have been a blend.
Yeah, I go, it's twofold. I'm not to sound callous about like, oh, well, they're 100, how many more years left do they have? But that's real math. But the second part of this is, people in nursing homes and those sorts of facilities are generally isolated and cloistered away. And it is actually much easier to keep them in safe conditions than it is the essential workers that we have been talking about. And there's just been sort of this axiomatic thing of like, well, you've got young and healthy people. They can handle this a lot better than older people can. And that would be true if older people had to get up and go and work at the grocery store for 40 hours a week at the cashier stand, as compared to a 30-something-year-old like person. Yeah, like the 30-year-old woman is going to have a much better survival rate than the 75-year-old man working the checkout counter. But that's not the experience.
Who are the people transmitting the disease? It's not the if it gets into a isolated population like prison or a nursing home, it spreads rapidly, right?
Yes.
But it only is entering those places because of people from the outside, like that back in when this all started in like March or April, where there was that wedding that happened, and the people who got infected, there was like 180 people got infected or something like that from one wedding. It was because 50 of those people got infected from a prison guard who attended the wedding. And so people all over the country were, exponentially affected. And then like 3 or 4 people died who didn't even go to that wedding.
And this gets to another thing. I don't have this on the slate, so I am talking a little conjecturally here, but it's definitely real because I was watching, I think it was a Deutsche Welle report on this. The super spreader thing is still not particularly well understood. And the way that certain people are just megaphones of COVID transmission. Like they can't help themselves. It's like, that prison guard, yeah, he was exposed, but I bet you, if they tested that guy, they'd also find that he has the hallmarks of a super spreader type person. Which again is not like a particularly filthy person. It's just some people are way better at transmitting this virus than others.
Like little kids.
Yes. Part of why I'm so worried about schools. Like, so you go, okay, yeah, Timmy's probably not a super spreader. Jenny's not a super spreader. Letitia's not a super spreader. But Paul's a disease monkey. You got to get him out of the classroom.
I mean, there was even a time in school when I remember them shutting down school just because they could not control the stomach bug. Wow. Children are the worst when it comes to bugs. I'm just like, that's what I do not understand the logic of letting them go back to school, but I also am not keeping up with the science and stuff enough in that regard, so I can't comment too much on it. But geez, it does feel strange.
I'm not a science expert, so to this point, which I think is probably clear to everyone who's ever fucking listened to this show, math is also kind of shaky for old Novy. So like obviously science is going to be a mixed bag. Physics not bad. Other math things, but like. I look at these articles, and I guess my point is when I'm talking about reopening schools, I want to see more evidence to be convinced that reopening schools is the right answer. Perhaps it is, but I have not seen that as of yet.
Well, the main argument that I hear that once it's posed, it gets foggy is the mental health counter, because you can't make that analytical. And so here's the thing that no one ever, or I have yet to hear. So we are saying that when everyone is back in school, but we still have to keep everyone socially distanced, that will be such a much more optimal mental health circumstance.
Or how about going
to actually gameplay that out? It may not be better. It may be worse.
How about going to a school and losing a classmate? I'm sure you guys probably remember at some point in high school, like a noted member of your school died, and like how traumatizing and depressing that was for everyone. Like I remember his name, Brian O'Leary. Rest in peace, dude. He was a cool guy, and like I hung out with that guy. And when Brian O'Leary died, or when Dan Conscian died, 35 years old, their names are still burned into my brain, and 2, like it. I mean, when Dan died, I almost want to start crying about it right now. Like, it's really, really traumatizing. That kid was gonna go on to make movies and stuff. He was really getting into film and like shooting stuff all the time. And like editing on his MacBook and everything. Yeah, I don't want to get lost in it, but like, rest in peace, dude. So like the whole idea of getting these kids back in school so that they can experience the death of a classmate in person, up close and personal. Let's talk about what mental health's going to look like after that.
Or their favorite teacher, or
Also heartbreaking, yeah.
their cool coach.
Well, if we're also talking about how schools are a prison pipeline, how much more does school feel like prison when you have to socially distance at 100% capacity?
Yeah, and school already kind of felt prison-y in the post-Columbine world too, because most of them are designed for like lockdown scenarios so that you can stop an active shooter.
I have to say this though. I'm not completely unaware of what's happening with the students because I work for a university library. So I see a lot of what the university level students are dealing with, and they hate this. They are not learning. They are being required to do things in terms of tests and papers and deadlines. The professors are not mitigating expectations at all.
There's no training for these teachers going into this, so yeah, yeah.
Professors have egos, okay? I've dealt with them. And so they think that their class is the only class that matters. And so you should really, really, cater all of your time towards making sure you pass their course. And that's in a normal day. That's in normal years. Over Zoom and remote, it's been terrible to watch. I mean, most of them are adapting, but I see the Reddit for my university and the student depression levels and anxiety over, well, can I pass with a 50 on my course sort of conversations are out of control. Like, they are so angry, especially about their tuition going towards this education that doesn't feel up to par. They don't feel like they're retaining anything. So there's definitely a loss in terms of what remote learning is like for people and how it helps them actually get any sort of benefit from education.
This really, to me, is the culprit. Like, the root problem here is this ridiculous educational expectation that was set up during the Trump administration that's now being continued by the Biden administration of, we're going to have something that approximates normal learning. And the ultimate reality is you can have something that approximates normal learning and just go, fuck COVID, we're just getting it. Or you can actually, you can do something. Go ahead.
Yeah. Normal learning would never require that a young woman have a photograph taken of her lap in order to complete a test. That's a thing that happens. I think it was my university. There is a test setting for these online tests where they have to have their webcams on while they're taking the test to see the room to make sure they're not cheating. And one of these professors required them to tilt the camera to their laps to make sure they didn't have a book in their lap. So that is, there's like lots of very little things that you don't notice until they're cropping up. What is normal learning when it comes to that?
No, it's bonkers. I've thought about this a bunch. If I had a kid, they would just have been pulled from school for the last year, and I would have them learning how to do things that they'll be able to use for the rest of their life, like woodworking, like doing practical skill building stuff around the house. Because why deal with the ridiculous expectations from teachers who don't yet know how to teach remotely and have never had any training to do so? Why agonize and stress over trying to get onto Zoom and like fake your way to 1/3 of the normal learning you do when I could much more normally adapt this so that my child can learn an actual skill that they'll be able to use for the rest of their life, like whatever it is. So something more practical, and just make the best use of this time that you can, and then make up the education later on.
Yeah, one of my concerns here is also it's related to kind of the sense of morality that happens whenever you're remote learning. Just to take a step back from there, if we look at all college graduates right now who have yet to enter in the working world, how many of them professionally are going to spend the bulk of their lives remote working? And so I really doubt that remote working goes away in a lot of these industries where it's creeped up in due to COVID.
But work is not learning. I mean,
right.
shit, I'll tell you, I've worked a lot of jobs where I've learned nothing.
Right. But I think what's going on right now is it's a lot of my parents aren't watching and I am technically here, but I can turn my camera off. And it's a lot of inner turmoil that these people are going through, finding their own sense of morality when no one is otherwise there to keep them in check. And these young people are being tested in ways that you and I were never tested.
Yeah, dude, and like that level of discipline has to be learned, and like you don't just learn it overnight either.
Well, in a sense, they're learning it right now. It's just the outcome as they're learning this skill is poor education outcomes. They're learning great self-discipline. It's just at an incredibly slow learning curve because their parents have never done it. They've never seen anyone model it in their life before. They're the first people to do this. And so they are a science experiment. I don't know. I don't know where this goes, but I know this generation's sense of right and wrong is going to be totally different. Like, I'm not saying they're going to be worse. But
no. I mean, like, look,
yeah.
we had Columbine and we had 9/11, and like those were formative things. But I'm talking to this younger generation, and they're way cool and everything. But I'm thinking like they had Parkland, when some of them were 13. Then they had Donald Trump when some of them were 16. And now they're in college and it's COVID-19 and like they didn't even really get a chance to enjoy college. Like they've had so many different beats of their young lives just get disrupted by like horrible traumatic news events. And they've been confronted with time and again sort of like government as not a force for good, but a force for chaos or ineffective addressing of the needs. I know it's depressing, man. I feel for them. So let's raise the spirits of the show here. The White House, not just the House, the White House said that Biden would support efforts to establish the creation of a 9/11 type commission to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Nancy Pelosi said on Monday that the House would move to establish an independent commission for Congress to, quote, get to the truth of the Capitol attack, as well as, quote, the interference with the peaceful transfer of power. Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, said that the White House would also cooperate with Congress to deter similar episodes in the future.
Can't wait for instead of 9/11 truthers, we have 1/6 truthers, which I'm pretty sure are already out there.
Already got that. They already say that Antifa's really behind it. I was listening to somebody who from the Proud Boys, and the Proud Boys basically already went like, well, no real Proud Boys were at this, and there was the one chapter, but that guy went rogue, and they weren't really with us. It was essentially a false flag, and they're trying to... No, I mean, super obvious. I mean... I think the thing that bothers me with the 9/11 type commission is like, so like, what did the 9/11 commission do? Here's the thing: insofar as the 9/11 commission did something, the most important thing it did was show Saudi Arabia's ties to 9/11, and then a lot of effort was made by the Obama administration, among others, to block people who were victims of the 9/11 attacks from really taking Saudi Arabia to court.
Hey, hey Biden, maybe instead of wasting my time with a commission that's probably not going to do anything in terms of that, because I saw everything that happened. There's video footage that's out there like crazy about what happened. All I want is consequences, and then if you want a commission, I'd love a commission into Jamal Khashoggi's death. Maybe that'll be if we're talking about Saudi Arabia again,
How about a special prosecutor for the attacks of the Capitol? Yeah, instead of a commission. I'm reading this.
Consequences.
I
Is
mean,
there a commission that you can say like, well, that was worth it, or that
ooh,
that
that's a good
added up?
question, man. I'll throw that one to the listeners. Yeah.
I think the one about I think was it the Warren Commission for JFK?
The Warren Commission was the JFK. That's the
Yeah,
first one
but
that
that was
comes to mind.
totally
as
worth
a-
it because it's just given us decades of fun, decades of conspiracy theory.
I mean, to that point, people like fun. Even if you don't get answers, sometimes people like questions. In that sense, the War Commission was dope. No, but to your point, Brian, one struggles to think of a commission that does anything. A special prosecutor might. And I think, like this ends the rather frustrating chapter of the Capitol Hill. Biden, I don't know if I include this, but like earlier this week, Biden also said, like, I'm done with talking about Donald Trump. So like he's over it. Trump might not be done with him. He's going to be back at CPAC next week. So, which
Wow.
he delivered. Yeah, CPAC a couple of years ago, you guys might remember, he delivered the longest speech of his presidency, which clocked in at 2 hours.
Do you remember back in the in the old work days when we used to be captioners?
And we had to caption CPAC.
The CPAC Saturdays where every year it'd come around and you just sit there and be like, you'd have to, tell the next captioner, I'm sorry, man, Godspeed.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I'm haunted by CPAC.
CPAC's horrible. Like it's a horrible place. It's gotten more horrible over time. So yeah, like I don't think anything's going to come, of course, to the 9/11 Commission. And I think the bigger problem here, as we're moving past impeachment, is the way this last week has played out. So you remember a couple episodes ago, I was making fun of Chris Murphy, saying like, "Hey man, don't say we're going on vacation, man. We're not going to be on vacation next week. You know we're doing district work, and you know how important district work is, man. And we're going to be working on this COVID bill." Except that there was a giant freaking blizzard. Chris Coons, of course, gave up the game by going like, "We all want to get home before Valentine's Day. Like it's not even really about doing work." Yo, you didn't hear that?
Romantics.
Yeah, I know. Chris Coons, the guy you think of when you think of True Romance, too. He courted Jeff Flake nicely. But so like, it sort of blew a hole in this, and then of course here comes Ted Cruz to really sort of solidify what district work is really all about, right? District work's going to Cancun, and then blaming your daughters. So yeah, like. This last week with the blizzard has really put into relief for me the week prior with impeachment and the cop-outs that were being delivered all going into that weekend as to why they couldn't call witnesses, because there were so many more important things they needed to get to. And then to that point, this last week has been spent on Capitol Hill doing drums around Neratandon. I don't care. I live in Texas. People don't have power. People don't have water. Or Biden doing foreign policy shit. I don't care. Like, most of my states without power, most of my states without water, and he's like showing up late here. Not as bad as Ted Cruz again, but like showing up way late. Now I'm gonna do something about it on Friday. When seconds and hours counted, it took days from our government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you having a Ted Cruz moment over there? Like I saw you like catch. Yeah.
Ted Cruz lives in my head rent free.
Yeah, no, I saw you like had to regroup yourself on the video feed here.
In my head, every time Ted Cruz's name is said, it's actually altered to Ted fucking Cruz, that giant fucking dork. I can't type a tweet with his name without that entire phrase. You can probably go through my search history and see how many times I've Ted fucking Cruz, that giant fucking dork, is in my Twitter history. Yeah, I hate him. How about that? Where do I start with that hatred? I don't know if that's helpful, just to be blindly hateful of someone on a podcast. I mean, it's so useful for affecting change in the world. Is my rage that warmed my MySpace while
think of it as informative.
Cold.
Yeah. Like, think of it as like you're informing. Like, this has a global reach. You are informing people around the world how much Texans hate Ted Cruz. And like we fucking hate him. Like,
hate him so much.
I
Okay,
hate him.
I just gotta say, the Cancun thing, right? The logic of his lie is such that I, Father Ted Cruz, to bless my tween and maybe teen children, have decided to let them go to Cancun. And I was going to escort them there because of safety. And then I was going to abandon them there because of not safety. So my children are now in a foreign country, one that I sometimes refer to as extremely dangerous because all those people that flood over the wall to come over to this country.
Well, it's dangerous enough. You can't trust your wife. You can't trust your wife.
Yeah,
to
your
watch
wife
the
can't
kids.
go through that.
She can't chaperone this. You gotta go.
So, how about this? What sounds worse to you? Ted Cruz travels to Cancun during a disaster in his own state, or Ted Cruz somehow finds a generator and stays home. Maybe he gets the generator when he shouldn't have, but that's a fire that's a little bit easier to put out now, ain't it?
What about the other one of Ted Cruz abandons daughters in Cancun? I think that's crazy to me. Like, you should have just stayed. At that point, just stay and say, you know what? I screwed up, but look, no airplanes. I gotta be out here on this beach in these shorts. I made a huge, just admit to a mistake. I just want someone to take responsibility for their actions once in this lifetime.
Or get held accountable for them.
If the Republicans are following along with the Trumpian standard of machismo, it certainly doesn't make sense to leave Cancun.
Yeah.
This is, I think, where Ted Cruz made the ultimate mistake. Is you gotta Ken Paxton your way, just like white knuckle through it. Like, how much damage do you have on you? Doesn't matter. I'm just moving ahead one day at a time, and unless you cut my head off, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just gonna keep moving forward. And this is what I've been saying with Trump too. Like, everyone keeps going, oh, he's done now. I'm like, no one actually cut the head off the snake. Like, he's gonna keep slithering forward. There's no reason he won't.
Oh man, and I think that's what Ted really wants to be is to have that. But
I guess if nothing else, because he made this move, if there is a Trumpian element, whether it's Trump or someone who's just following along his line in 2024, it's going to be easy to paint Cruz as beta, which is totally not. That wasn't GOP cool before Trump.
Wait until Donald Trump brings up that. Like, Ted Cruz tries to run against Trump this time, and Trump, I mean, think about how easy it will be for any Republican, really, to bring this up and, like, just dunk Ted Cruz into the water. But, like, Trump in particular, like, oh, are you going to sell out your wife again? Because you did it the one time to me. Are you going to sell her out, or are you going to blame your daughters this time? You want to sell them out to me?
Oh, can you imagine being those children? They are going to, one of these days, they're going to be 18 years old. They're going to be adults in this world, and they're going to be able to make their own choices. And I'm just saying, young Cruz daughters, I will help you into this world of hating your dad if you need.
Probably should hate your mom, too, honestly. Because she was responsible for planning out the trip. I think
I love that. Just like, girls, let's get away. It's time for a nice...
She's as vacant as Ted is. I think sometimes it's too easy to go like Ted's morally vacant and forget.
But she doesn't have power. That's my thing. Is you're comparing Trump to a Kardashian.
Right. Yeah.
You know, Trump was the president. Kardashian isn't a president. That's
and I get that. I'm saying within the purview of these kids, also just as people. Like you're right. Like, one has power. So I'm not. I mean, the show doesn't focus on Ted Cruz's wife, Heidi. I don't spend a lot of time talking about Heidi on the show. I talk about Ted Cruz because he's the senator from Texas. But, like, in terms of people, if Heidi was the senator from Texas, she'd be just as bad as Ted because she'd be married to Ted Cruz.
Yeah, we gotta one of these days. Just talk.
I think the most I need to know about this related to Heidi is, does she know already who in the text chain Like, as soon as she knew someone dropped dime on her, did she know which one of her friends it was? Or does she think all of her friends are willing to drop dime on her?
I hope she thinks they're all in on it. I hope she can't sleep at night, not able to figure out which one of these, because you know that one of these people were like, finally, I have been friends with this woman for years, looking for my opportunity to sell her out. And for that person, I say, welcome to the resistance.
I wonder what the bridge too far is, among those patricians. But yeah, clearly the Cancun thing was. All right, so going back to Trump here, the decoupling thing. I continue to follow the story. I'm always just keeping an eye on the numbers. As the facts change, I will change my position if needed. But I will say, Quinnipiac, new poll, 75% of Republicans say that they'd like to see Trump play a prominent role in the Republican Party. Overall, 60% of Americans do not want Trump to play a prominent role in the party. So it doesn't matter about the 60%. All that matters is the 75% of Republicans, and that 60% also sort of like accounts for 10% of Republicans who would love to decouple from, or the 10% of the overall country who'd love to decouple from Trump, but absolutely can't. There's just not enough of them. Lindsey Graham appeared on Fox News Sunday to boast about the prospects of Lara Trump, the wife of Eric Trump. So she's a nominal Trump. It's kind of like a weird bank shot way of getting a Trump into office without actually really getting a Trump into office here. You're not putting one of the Koopa kids in. You're putting the wife of one of the Koopa kids in. And she's being considered as a Senate candidate. So the goal is to get a Trump in the Senate for Richard Burr's North Carolina Senate seat. Lindsey Graham said, quote, "The biggest winner, I think, of this whole impeachment trial is Lara Trump. If she runs, I will certainly be behind her because I think she represents the future of the Republican Party."
Well, on another Sunday morning update, I also heard Steve Scalise went through 2 minutes of not admitting that Joe Biden legitimately won the election.
This is, guys, just for people listening here, this is the guy who got shot in the congressional baseball shooting just a few years ago. And so you'd think he would have, all people, maybe, just maybe, realized that this political violence issue is a real thing, as he's still dealing with physical after effects from being shot by political violence.
He's willing to admit it. We just need to talk to the electors, and there's some states that still have to, it's a very fun answer.
Wow, that's incredible.
This is why I say with absolute confidence I have my problems with the Democratic Party and like Biden's leadership and all of these things, but like the Republican Party is fundamentally at its core just absolutely rotten, and it's a no contest. Like this party needs to be ideologically burned to the ground.
Who is Lara Trump? Why
Eric
is she
Trump's wife.
I know, but Lindsey
Yeah.
Graham is sitting here preaching like she's the future of the party. I'm like, what has she done? Is she? I'm like racking my brain. Like, did I miss her running for a mayor, representative, doing anything besides just being married to a guy?
They run a winery.
There's lots of people. There's lots of women who are married to guys.
Yes, and there's lots of women who are married to a guy who owns a winery. And that my understanding is that like Lara Trump and I know Lara and Eric own a winery. I'm pretty sure it's their dominant thing, or like she might be the one who like largely runs the winery side of this, or like nominally runs the winery. I don't know how it works. I don't know wineries. I'm not a winery guy.
Still not hearing anything that says I understand policy and I would be a good representative of the state of North Carolina.
Are you familiar with Cabernet Sauvignon?
I'm not judging the fact that she may be a valid businesswoman.
She's a job creator.
Job creator.
Job creator. I'm sorry, that was my snowflake self getting super triggered. I've got to go step outside to melt a little bit because the temperature's finally dropped.
So, still Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, which I read that. I was like, what? That guy didn't get shit canned in the first week? Really? Like,
Yeah, what is the problem with that? There is like a loophole of why he still has that job, and I don't
oh,
remember what it is.
God, that's nuts. So, anyways, he plans to slow down mail delivery and make it more costly by raising postage rates and eliminating first class mail. This copy doesn't include this, but I think it's really important here. DeJoy has massive holdings in Federal Express and UPS. Like when I talk about Lloyd Austin as General McRaytheon, and like how it's no accident that this week Raytheon got a big missile contract. Lloyd Austin's been in office for less than like 3 weeks. Gets confirmed 93-5 in the Senate with like only like Tom Cotton and like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley voting against him. And then Raytheon gets a fat ass contract. That's how a lot of these positions work. I got another story on the site that's really about that. Louis DeJoy, yeah, he's a hack. Yeah, he was definitely trying to help Trump win the election. But beyond all of that, not like Wilbur Ross. He's there to grift up the stock price and hurt the industry or help the industry that he's tied back to. And so DeJoy, with the support of the agency's bipartisan but Trump-appointed governing board, has discussed lumping all first-class mail into the same 3 to 5 day window as non-local mail. Effectively, what that would do is eliminate USPS's ability to compete in the priority mail sector. So if you need a package, if I need to send something to Brian this week, it's got to be there by Wednesday. I have to do it through private. I have to, because of what DeJoy's doing now.
Hey, dear Mr. President Biden, hello. My name is Lindsay Duke. I am a constituent of Texas. Can you please fire this asshole? Sincerely, Lindsay Duke. That is my letter. I don't know what to do at this point. Why does
it's going to take 7 days for that to get in. I'm sorry.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, unfortunately, DeJoy
I
might
put like extra postage. I'm putting like 4 or 5 little forever stamps on it.
That's the point. Is it literally will not matter how many stamps you throw on that fucker. When DeJoy gets his way, you just won't be able to get it there in one day.
Yeah, that now means it takes forever.
Yeah, and so like what that also means is it eliminates businesses' ability to really credibly use USPS, making businesses in particular, have to do commerce through United Parcel Services or Federal Express. It's fucked up. It is 100% contrary to the spirit of the post office, and I don't really know why Biden's dithering on this one.
We need to get rid of stocks in the government. Like if you're gonna have, I have no problem with people owning stocks. I own stocks myself.
Discrete stocks should not be allowed for government appointees and for Senate and House appointees.
They should be either required to freeze their ability to move or shift them for the time, not only the time that they're in office, but like a period of time after they're in office. Or they should be forced to divest them completely.
I think it should only be index funds. I think essentially what you should be allowed to do as a member of Senate, House, or inside of government is you should be allowed to have your money in index funds at that time. But even sector-wide ETFs, I was thinking about this the other day. I spent a while thinking on this one. You can't do discrete stocks because we've seen how that plays out time and time again. And there was supposed to be this thing, if you remember from the last decade, the Stocks Act. The whole thing like fell apart. Like Pelosi and the Democrats advanced it. By the time it got across the finish line, it was so neutered that it lacked any of the actual teeth about discrete stock trading. But you should not be able to own, like Loeffler and Burr did, Zoom stocks. It should actually be illegal for them to go and buy Zoom, period. Not because it's Zoom, but because it should not be allowed to be able to do that, because as a legislator, you can make laws that manipulate that stock price. It's essentially always insider trading. Now, at the same time, I think they should be able to have some exposure to the market, and so that's why I'm fine with them. If they want to own a index-wide NASDAQ holding, I don't care. If you want to hold an index-wide Wall Street, like Dow Jones holding, I don't care. Yeah, sorry, I just want to finish that thought.
I think once you become a public servant, you are a servant to the public, and you should have to sacrifice accordingly. I mean, I work for a public university. I just had to do my ethics training. just not last week because that was frozen, but the week before, about the things I am and am not allowed to do as a as a member of not only the university but a state run university. So, there's things about me, running for office, things that I can't do there, things that I can't do in terms of accepting money, um, in regards to, gifts and things like that, and things that I can't do in terms of earning money if it may or may not affect my job. So if that's just something that our lowly little library assistant has to deal with, why is the postmaster general up here owning stocks in FedEx? And that doesn't make any sense to me. I know why. I'm sorry. It's because I'm poor and they're not.
So we've established, and I'm absolutely on board on your takes on this here, that this shouldn't be allowed. As far as a house statement here, can you imagine someone drafting something that maybe like, okay, remember that whole GameStop thing? Well, if you'd like that to never happen again, this is what you give up. Like, is there anything like that?
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, I didn't even put the GameStop hearing on this because it was so silly, and like and I'm not talking about like deep fucking value and like the actual GameStop guys who, yeah, like they kind of pissed on Congress, but I'll be honest, listening to some of the questions that I heard Maxine Waters ask, I'd piss on them too, because like they weren't. The lawmakers, it's not like with the Facebook hearing from last year. They just simply do not understand these things, that they go in and LARP. They LARP that they're regulating, but they're not regulating. And I mean, I identified on this show here as a layperson a very obvious point of interest for them to look into, which is, okay, when this GameStop thing happened, yeah, they throttled GameStop purchases and AMC purchases and Nokia purchases and BlackBerry purchases. And you can kind of understand that on one level. But then they also throttled purchases of important stocks like Moderna, which went on a massive rally that day, or American Micro Devices, which also went on a massive rally that day. So like what they essentially did was create this broad Adult Swim day for all of Wall Street, where they pulled all the retail kiddies from the pool, and the big hedge fund sharks were able to go and make Mondo bucks, and all people like me could do as I was watching it is sit back and watch. I couldn't get in on the action. But the lawmakers don't even get that. They don't even understand that.
Chris, I cannot abide your victim mentality when the true victim here is me, because I owned 6 shares of GameStop stock back in the fall and I doubled my earnings in it, and then I sold it because I was like, I'll pay a bill, and I had like, it was worth like $50 at the time, and now it would have been worth like $3,000.
I'm sorry.
I'm hurt.
Yeah, you hijacked my victim status, though.
You can get in line behind my trauma.
I had it hard. I was watching. I could have made $10 a fucking share.
You know what we need is a secretary of Reddit, and then they can own GameStop stocks, and then that's how the rest of us can sort of like get the trickle down economy effects. Is if we have one secretary of Reddit for the regular people, just the regulars out there.
All right, so one other story kind of about like this corruption. This actually kind of keeps on the UPS thing. This is for the Daily Beast. Donors fume. It's bullshit Biden hasn't called about ambassadorships. Now, I think all of us as longtime followers of politics have always known that whether it's Democrats or Republicans, the ambassadorships are like the ultimate like naked political scam. And like McCain's clowned people. I remember John Kennedy, not like, we will go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Not that one. The one from, that was a bad Kennedy. Shut up. Don't look at me like that. Louisiana John Kennedy, who I'm not even going to attempt. We have ambassadorships all the time that people are not ready for them. And this is one of the most transparent articles I've ever seen about this. I'll read the copy. They wrote massive checks. They encouraged their deepest pocketed friends to do the same. They sat through Zoom concerts with James Taylor and Zoom roundtables hosted by Diane Lane. Oh, my heart weeps talking to a great actress and listening to a great acoustic guitar player. How awful. To help pay for the inauguration they didn't even get to attend. Now, some of President Joe Biden's most generous financial backers want what's coming to them, an ambassadorship. Both extraordinary and plenipotentiary, if possible. Plenipotentiary, what a word. And they're getting sick of waiting. It's bullshit, one Democratic fundraiser vented. The number of asks over the course of the campaign and over the course of the transition, and let's not even talk about the Zoom convention, and they can't even remember to make a phone call to the people who kept the lights on? From a practical standpoint, delays in office nominations are understandable. Nearly 2/3 of Biden's cabinet secretary nominations are currently stuck in confirmation logjams caused by the impeachment trial of his predecessor, and vacant ambassadorial positions are currently being minded by career foreign service officials who generally do the real diplomacy work anyways. So, the way this article is framing it, there's actually no rush because the work's getting done, people. Although Biden has not made any nominations to ambassadorial posts beyond career diplomat Linda Thomas Greenfield to the United Nations, he's still on pace with former President Barack Obama, who did not name his first ambassadorial nominee until March 2009. So if you're gathering from the copy here, when you actually assess all the facts, these donors are petulant little bitches and brats who want theirs and do not give a fuck that any of us are going through it right now. They don't care about the Capitol riot and holding Trump accountable. They earnestly thought, I guess, that maybe this whole COVID thing might be over in time for them to attend the inauguration in January and get to go to the cool cocktail parties and soirees. Their social calendar was supposed to be populated with bitchin' events in mid-January, and instead they had to watch it on Zoom. That's the tone. One more quote here. No one is owed an ambassadorship. Let me be clear, said one fundraiser who told the Daily Beast that they're not actively lobbying for a post. But people are owed the courtesy of a phone call. That it's just, it's not happening.
Is this Rahm Emanuel?
Credit to the Daily Beast for getting some of these quotes, right?
Yeah, someone is a whiny little bitch, and maybe they're really upset because they thought they were going to be the ambassador to Cancun, but now Ted Cruz has sullied that, and they don't want it anymore, and they're just very confused. I feel so bad for them and their money, and I just wipe my tears away with no money because I can't afford it.
You didn't get the GameStop shit because they're out here fucking you.
It's just, I love that. This is bullshit. I'm supposed to be the ambassador to Lithuania. Why? Why? What
I want to help the
right
people of Lithuania.
What do you think you're going to be doing? It's still a pandemic. They don't want us. The world doesn't want us anywhere. There's no cool parties. They can't be having you can't be the ambassador to France and be having cool hip Parisian parties and living it up as the ambassador to France. I don't know what they're expecting. These are just go on a vacation. You can go to these countries in your private jets and just pretend you're the ambassador.
I want to read some of these cover letters.
Yes.
I mean, I can keep reading these donor quotes. They're so fucking funny. Hillary Clinton was doing sit-down fundraising dinners with donors like a month before the general election because they didn't just have the small donors coming in. And then with Biden, it just didn't matter. Biden had never had to raise money before, and so there's just not this institutional memory of cultivating and maintaining donor relationships. Why wasn't Biden doing these sit-down dinners with everyone once COVID-19 happened and he was 80 years old? Why wouldn't the 80-year-old man sit down with strangers?
I mean, Trump was having parties. Look at him and how the people he infected.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, this whole thing is just it's gross. I mean, and it's not even like this robust defense of Joe Biden is like, yeah, he's fighting against corruption super hard. It's just a reminder of how much corruption is very much in democratic machine politics. Not activist movements, not people who are fighting, whether it's, defund the police, whether you're talking about prison reform, immigration reform, Medicare for all, anything, right to privacy getting into. That's how I'm talking about when I'm talking about the corruption. There is an operationalized political industrial complex among donors. And the way this dance is done is I give you the money, you give me the prestige. What is being leveraged by the politicians, what they have as a commodity to offer as the thing you get, much like when you donate to public radio and you get the tote bag, like what they can give you, the tote bag of politics, is the ambassadorship to Tanzania. It looks good. You get prestige. You get to fly on government jets. You get treated as Mr. Ambassador. You get to have that as a title for the rest of your life. You get bequeathed with honorifics for this price. That's the dance here. And again, real credit to the Daily Beast for getting these quotes and getting these donors to just like brain dropping this stuff and then having the balls to print it. Because it might jeopardize your ability to get these quotes again. But I think it's super important for people to know just how this ambassadorship stuff really works and how this is the swamp shit that has not gone anywhere. Like Trump didn't drain the swamp, and like no one's going to attempt to post Trump either. I hate to tell you, like this is just part of the swamp.
Yeah, in my opinion, the amount of suspicion that I have over stuff like appointments, it raises with the amount of expectations you have for things like executive orders. If this is a one-person show, which it shouldn't be, but if you're preparing for a one-person show, then it means more to me who you put into every single position. And that's probably in no way what this was about. But at least as far as I'm concerned, like, I wish there was some type of like threat or pushback that you could have, like, okay, we will start to generate something that isn't just laden with executive orders. But yeah.
Just to finish this out here, one last quote from a bundler, John Morgan, who is a prominent Florida lawyer and a high-level bundler from the Biden campaign. There are many people who have their hands up for positions even though they did very little for the campaign or have the required credentials. It's going to be slow. Priority positions need to be filled first. The ambassador to Brazil is not a priority. And again, I want you to all understand, I'm reading from a quote here. I don't even know what the fuck most ambassadors do all day. And then Morgan added, and this is obviously a joke, that said, I'd like to be the ambassador to Maui. Another party bundler did say, and this is like less kind of funny, but more sort of clear about the dynamics inside the administration that we'll need to keep an eye on too. It's this Harris-Biden dynamic. He goes, and read between the lines here, Kamala's brand is now tied to Biden's fundraising. Some donors see this as damaging to Kamala because they'll be shy about wanting to help. Not because people entirely just fundraise to get posts and ambassadorships and commission appointments. They do. But it is obviously, for some, a motivator.
Good times. Good to know
Dude,
that
these
Harvey
quotes,
Weinstein is still out there.
These quotes, they are like, I've never seen it just spelled out as nakedly.
If I would have known that the only people going after these positions weren't even trying to qualify themselves for these positions, I would have just earlier in my life, like when it, I would have done something to like put myself onto that trajectory. Because who are you exactly competing with? That's
the Kennedy. What is Shriver? She was, an ambassador for a while. Like that's like the only ambassador that comes to mind for me.
Well, they might try to make Ginger Kennedy an ambassador, because they tried to make Ginger Kennedy a senator, and they tried to make Ginger Kennedy a representative. Like they've tried everything with that kid.
So my minimum requirement for ambassador, anytime I've heard someone with that title, they typically know 3 or more languages.
Yeah, you don't need that anymore.
Let's just see how many languages. What is the standard deviation of languages these people know, other than English?
Where like Trump normally, even when Republicans would do this sort of like loosely, they would send someone from America who's got family roots to the country. So like you'd send a Vanderhoek to the Netherlands, right? Like, you might send Novembrino to Italy. Like, to at least create some sort of attachment between, like, yeah, Novembrino's Italian, so we're sending him to Italy. Like, maybe he'll strike it off. We're sending Vanderhoek over to the Netherlands because that's where his family's from. They don't even try that anymore. Now it's like literally just like send like a white guy to wherever.
Yeah, it's Mayor Quimby.
Right.
Yeah, it's Mayor. Yeah, Mayor Quimby gets sent to Tanzania. Yeah, no.
Hey, if they need an ambassador, I will work for cheap. I am much discounted.
I gotta tell you, from what I'm reading about these ambassadors, you actually will have to pay, and not cheap, apparently a lot of money, in order to get the job. It's one of those reverse jobs where you pay to get it.
Oh yeah, that's dumb.
It is dumb. It's clout chasey. All right, so to finish this off, I want to talk about something it's been like bubbling up in news headlines here for the last several months. And I think it's an interesting discussion. I don't think we're going to get to the bottom of it today. So if you all are listening and you've got thoughts on this, I'd love to hear it, because we'll probably revisit this again at some point. Ring doorbells. You all obviously know what Ring doorbells are. They are the smart doorbells that people are more and more installing onto the fronts of their houses. You ring it. It has a camera on it. That camera goes to your computer system, possibly your cell phone system, sends you a video and audio, in many cases, of what's going on at your front door. And many of these devices run in perpetuity 24/7. There's always been security cameras on houses, but the widespread commercial availability of devices like Ring Doorbell have really created a broad net of cameras here. Do either of y'all have a Ring Doorbell?
I don't have one at my apartment, but my family has a Ring Spotlight, or the floodlight type.
Yeah. So explain how that works.
So at the front door, they have this motion sensor camera that also will trigger a floodlight to come on anytime someone's within the range of the lens. Usually it picks up cats. Sometimes I'm biased against these cameras. I mean, I'm biased for these cameras, and I can't defend everything, but I can say that they have picked up some people like breaking into our garage. They've been helpful in that way, and they do what they do serve their function. There's just I understand there's going to be a lot of interesting things that happen with them, though.
Yeah. So like one of the article I saw that like reminded me, oh yeah, I do think about this stuff, because I'm like, I'm a right to privacy guy going way back. I mean, like we talk about, it's weird. It's like Snowden and WikiLeaks and Glenn Greenwald doing a number on his own career on this front. But so many of those like words have been decoupled from the original issue that really mattered to me that those guys were getting into. I at this point, Snowden and WikiLeaks has really turned into like a foreign policy thing of like U.S. imperialism bad. And I don't necessarily disagree with that premise, but WikiLeaks and why I liked groups like WikiLeaks and what I thought Snowden did that was useful had nothing to do with U.S. imperialism, and had everything to do with the right to privacy being encroached upon sort of by the two-headed snake of government and also private corporations, in often cases working in concert with each other post 9/11. A lot of like the Patriot Act legislation was written so that groups like Google and Facebook and a number of these internet companies that were birthed in the post 9/11 years, really, could work with the government to get the government information and help basically kind of monitor and surveil all of us, but in a way where the government's not legally speaking violating the Fourth Amendment, because essentially the private companies are the ones who've got all the information, and it's not until the government goes to grab the information that the Fourth Amendment's been violated. But the most important work already gets preemptively done by the private organization without violating any laws. I didn't necessarily think there was going to be a bone of contention, but that's the thing to me that I think has been lost about WikiLeaks and the NSA leaks and Snowden and everything. And Ring doorbells to me are not unlike the way we were discussing drones about 5 or 6 years ago. In this sense, we are creating a rather wide and ubiquitous network of cameras. And unlike drones, which often cases are not actually connected to the internet, they're just cameras that float, take a video, then that video can go back to a single computer hub or whatever. Many of these Ring doorbells are connected to an Internet of Things, allowing for hackers, and we have a lot of stories about this. Hackers are able to hack in to these Ring doorbells, as are law enforcement agencies, and they are able to set up. What I got together for this show here. If you go to patreon.com/DWATG and want to check out the slate, I put together a series of articles here where you've got like the LAPD and the Michigan PD talking about how they love these cameras because it allows them to do surveillance, because they can access the camera from 6566 Binghamton Street and 6588 Binghamton Street, and essentially have camera coverage of you driving down the street, and maybe we can get a shot.
Do you need permission from the Ring owner as the police department in order to get their footage?
Not necessarily. They can partner with Ring, the company, so it doesn't even necessarily have to be coming from you. You essentially, because you sign the end user license agreement with Ring, Ring owns the footage, not you.
Right.
So there is one issue that I think is a minor issue, although is a problem. It's not. It's I think the lesser of the two issues here. But the issue of regular people don't need to be surveilling people like the way that we do. Like I saw one article a couple weeks ago about this country music guy who's on his driveway and he's talking to a friend and he uses the N-word, and it gets caught on a Ring doorbell camera, and the owner of that house decides that he's going to leak that to the media. And gets the country music star in trouble. Obviously, I'm not condoning the language. I guess what I'm saying is I can't condone releasing the video because I don't think it's any of your business, really. It
seems similar to that owner of the Clippers who was removed as an owner because...
Oh, wow. I forgot about him.
Remember? Yeah, Sterling.
Yeah.
Because someone leaked information about him talking at home.
Yeah, well, that was his girlfriend at the time.
Right.
Yeah. So to your point, it does sort of move into in certain states they are one-party consent states, but many states are two-party consent states. So the point being, legally speaking, the morality is not clear if you can have two different legal codes, and people don't go one's totally immoral. But
by the way, Donald Sterling's a terrible person.
Yeah, no, he's a horrible guy. Yeah.
You know what's also interesting is that there's also a problem with when you say one-party consent. That depends on if it's audio or video.
Also true.
Like I believe in Illinois, you cannot. It's a two-party audio state, but a one-party video state.
Weird.
Which is a fun fact I learned from an episode of The Good Wife.
Wow.
Because the son, I think one of the sons was recording a cop, but because he was using his video to record the audio, and he just had the audio, he had it in his pocket. Technically, because it was video, he didn't get in trouble for it. So I don't know. That's just good. It could be laws have
Yeah,
changed.
yeah. No, I mean, and, like, this maybe makes a case, and I want to think on it more. I encourage everyone else to think on it too, and just get at me what you think. Maybe we do need to have a two-party consent thing. Like maybe technology is moving such that it's time to really reconsider how these laws work.
How do you get a consent from a burglar?
Well, so it'd be different if you were submitting this to law enforcement to pursue a specific crime.
Well, how about if I'm in my Ring app and I see a suspicious individual that's come into my garage and it's 3 a.m. and I share that to my neighborhood, I didn't get his consent to do that.
No, but so to that point, you are. I think there's sort of two things there. One, maybe you shouldn't be able to share it to neighborhood, but two, maybe the right way this happens is you share that to law enforcement because you're reporting a specific crime. In this case, it's trespassing, potential burglary. So like, this is not, oh my God, a black person's dropping a package on my step. Is it a bomb?
Which is actually a lot of the Ring neighborhood stuff is usually
a lot of it.
A lot of racism in those neighborhood groups. They're like, what is this suspicious person doing at my door? And it's literally just usually a black or brown person knocking on the door, maybe handing a pamphlet and believing it. And like, that's not a suspicious person. That is just an individual literally using the door for its function, which is to be knocked upon. So there's all sorts of weirdness. And the thing also is that I know that I pay $3 a month to Ring to store our videos for 2 months. It's otherwise they're deleted pretty rapidly within a few days. So there's some weird area in terms of where the things are stored. Like, how long would you expect to have? Would police have access to something? I don't know.
Well, especially here's another point of that. If you're paying for them to store it, shouldn't you be able to own it? Shouldn't you be the one who owns that video?
Now we're talking about licensing, because licensing is my area of somewhat expertise at this point. You don't own the songs on your iPod that you purchase. You own a temporary license for the file of that to be stored for for the life of that file. That file could die in terms of it no longer works on upgraded technology. Or it can't pass between sharing devices. So I think what's happening there is you're not paying for the Ring video, you're paying for the storage capacity, which is it's like paying for a storage unit in where you would store furniture. The person who owns that storage unit could evict you at any moment if you don't pay your bill or something, and they own all the contents.
So Chris and Lindsay, can you imagine someone competing with Ring simply based on a differentiation of license agreements? Or would you have, and it seems like for that, they would want more money, or would they want less? It seems like if you're gonna be a provider competing with Ring, and the way that you're differentiating is with a license agreement, then that makes your cost raise, right?
I don't know. What you're really dealing with is Amazon, because Amazon owns Ring. So the direct competition to Ring is Nest, and so they're very similar. Those are major companies. I think you'd be wanting to think about it in terms of like a VPN service, which are really popular these days, of promoting the idea of you should have privacy, and you should not have to rely on these companies, and we're going to be very open with our terms and how we use your data and how we protect your data, as opposed to Amazon, which is going to be like a black box in terms of.
I'd be curious how Mist competes against Ring, and how do they advertise? Is there any talk of we invade your privacy less, or is that even a subject now? I don't even know if there's a market for that now.
I mean, what's funny to that point is when it comes to the privacy invasion thing, a lot of these people who put them up are sort of ambivalent about that or apathetic towards it. Like in the same way that like, you know, though I had one article, I don't know if I had it, but like there was one article where the person who had it in the house was sort of like, well, if you don't want to be videotaped, just don't like walk up on my threshold. I'm like, yeah, but like, I mean, if you're a person who delivers a package, again, there's a race and class component to that. You're finding yourself being constantly documented and constantly part of the informal panopticon on a constant basis. Like if you are a UPS package delivery driver, you might spend most of your day on camera and not even realize that you're mostly on camera all day.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the only solicitor 99% of this country is willing to accept is the Girl Scout. That's about it.
I
Yeah.
don't have cash for her. Like, what is she expecting? She better
Yeah,
have a
but
card
if,
swipe.
but if she knocks on the door, you're not saying, what is this?
Mhm.
Like that's the one figure I can say, like, without a doubt, no matter whose door she knocks on, you're not going to get flack. I don't know when that changed.
So now the other part of this, and why I think we do need to be vigilant on this, is that police departments are strapped for cash. And I know on some level we go, but they have so much fucking money. Yes, they use it the wrong way. That's true. But one of the places where like they do experience budgetary constraints, despite how much money they sometimes make, is when it comes to surveillance technology. And police departments would like to liberate their budget, especially if you're looking forward and you're thinking there's now a serious political movement to scale back what police budgets are. I think this impulse is only going to strengthen as some police departments start to recognize it's an inevitability there will be some cutbacks. So because of that, they like the idea of partnering with Ring Doorbell and neighborhood watch communities and getting access to this. Here is a quote. This is from a story from Capitol News Service up in Michigan. This is Livonia Police Chief Curtis Cade. Cameras are everywhere nowadays. We all have them. We carry them around with us. They're on our phones. Whether it's a home or a business, a lot of people have access to monitoring activities through video. Ring is just one of them, which he thinks is totally fine. But like the implication here is there are all these cameras now. Police departments see that there are all these cameras here, and it behooves them. So I don't think it's an accident that in the last calendar year, I've got a story about LAPD partnering up with Ring and neighbors. In this case, to use Ring doorbells to surveil and identify participants in a Black Lives Matter protest. Yeah, that's the other part of this is like, yeah, they're going to be using them for this. And then also now you're seeing up in Michigan, another place where there were a lot of protests, an impulse to start getting Ring doorbell partnerships, especially with the white suburbs and everything like that. Yeah, and I like, and the Neighbors app, like to your point, Lindsay, I worry. I don't have a problem with stuff going through the cops than to the Neighbors app as like a, hey, we just want to make everybody in your neighborhood aware of this thing that's happening right now. I do have a problem potentially with just taking footage and being able to throw it up on the Neighbors app, because I do think you're able to violate your neighbor's privacy in a lot of cases. And I guess morality wise, if it would be weird if I stood at the edge of my driveway and gawked at you and watched as you and your wife or you and your friend were talking about something, like if you feel like that's inappropriate, it's probably inappropriate for me to like disseminate out that video too.
You are walking into very interesting and complicated legal grounds and moral grounds because you're talking as a paparazzi person at that point.
Yeah, I'm anti-paparazzi. I'll be honest.
It's not that. What I'm saying is
Yeah.
when you're in a public space, you have the right to film. Usually, unless there's some ordinance, like in some of these like Beverly Hills areas, they've got special things. But at this point, there's several things going on. You've got the right to film in public spaces. You have the right to film in your private space. When you use a camera and you film something, you now own that footage as copyright. So it's interesting with what's happening with Ring. I'd like to look more into the terms and services of, that camera is mine, that camera is filming, but you own the footage. That's very interesting, because the copyright should belong to the person who's operating the camera, which would
But
technically
if
be
you
me.
if you send a license agreement to them, like once you sign it to them, I mean, I think you're right. Maybe that's why they need you to sign the EULA, is to hand that over to them.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Mine's filming a driveway, so it's not like I have a lot of fear for it. But I also understand the concept of both that we give away our freedom in inches, not miles, and also that um, we those who sacrifice liberty for security
Security.
deserve neither. That whole adage.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't want to, pull out my Gadsden flag here and hang it in
yeah.
the back to end the show. All
No, I
right,
get it.
guys,
I think
I'm
what you've
rebranding.
I think what you've got is a problem where this has happened. This country music singer, for this example, couldn't have happened to a douchebaggy or fellow. It sounds like.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you have the worst moral quandaries always involve shady gray individuals where that you're like, yeah, I don't want to support him, but also if someone was like filming my kids and uploading them in their driveway playing in like the kiddie pool or something, and now there's like a creepy website out there, I could see that, but it's all legal. That's the problem. I don't know. I don't have an answer,
No,
and I don't pretend to ever.
using the country guy, I think is actually a good point. I like these sorts of limit cases in the sense that you have a thing that on one hand you want to be like fuck that guy, but at the other hand, then you start to feel kind of icky when you really think about like, yeah, I mean, but this guy like really was actively not making a public, like really not trying to be public. Like you could sort of tentatively say he was quote in public, but then like it's sort of like, is your driveway in public or is it your private property? And you can't
Mhm.
argue on one hand, oh, if I'm running a camera on my lawn, then I'm on my private property, that's fine. But this guy doesn't have the private property shield at the same
I
time.
think that this is once again a feature, not a uh, bug. I think that all of this grayness is intentional, and at this point, it might be, uh, it will eventually be solved, whether in some sort of policy form, because all technological advances reach some sort of regulation eventually. But that won't necessarily mean it ends in a good situation for anyone involved, because I don't know. Sometimes when things are gray and mushy and we can take them case by case, it's better, safer. I
It's
don't
a
know.
status quo that's actually not always, it's not the best of all possible worlds, but it's like the better than an average possible world.
Yeah, as opposed to like a blanket statement that is going to affect everything equally, even if not every situation is equal. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm just the ambassador to Cancun.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there for this ambassadorship to Maui. Get me the fuck out of Texas.
Well, to get to the subject of the cost of the police state and how that's going to have to change, it seems that there's two directions where that they can go. You can either turn cops into cameras or you can turn cops into drones. Now, in my opinion, the drones are much less Orwellian than the cameras. But
That's interesting.
here's what I see happening. The drones start coming out. The drones eventually have lethal force. A drone misuses lethal force. People complain about the misuse of the lethal force. And the counter is, well, yeah, but the drone isn't prejudiced. It's just temporarily stupid. And we're going to fix that.
Ooh.
And then you say, well, no, we want more cameras. And then it goes straight cameras.
Here's what's interesting.
That's the way I see it traveling.
You've brought up a really interesting thing about prejudice, like a prejudice technology. We know they exist. Face tracking is racially, designed to favor white faces. Like when people were, first trying to unlock their phones, because of the majority of people coding and testing that stuff are white. So, in 70 years when we're living in, cyberpunk, whatever, and there's a drone that's been designed, is it going to be designed to to be racially motivated as well. Like it's
To stop and
trained,
frisk.
yeah, to stop and frisk, to go by the data. Like facts are squishy sometimes.
Well, I guess that sort of shits on that distinction, but it's appropriate.
Well, no, I think you're right on the Orwellian thing. I think you used Orwellian the right way, which is
Yeah.
like super
Who knows?
uncommon in all of the internet. So like we're doing it over here, and here's why I think you're dead on with the Orwellian usage, because Orwell is, yes, it's about the state imposing it, but there's another part where like the people in 1984 are doing it to themselves. Like they have the TVs that watch them. And in this sense, Ring Doorbell really does serve as like kind of like a brilliant, it watches you. It's the story that I had on the slate here about the baby monitor that gets hacked into by the hacker. Like you essentially set up the cameras yourself, and you tell yourself that you're better off with the cameras all around you.
Like this camera right here. I
Yeah.
mean, there's cameras everywhere. That's the
Now that you remind me here.
I mean, Mark Zuckerberg has a sticker over his webcam, and Mark Zuckerberg is basically president of the internet. So if he's at least thinking of these security issues, oh look, there's a cat.
Kitten Yuffie.
Then there's something to it, right? But there's also this thing about privacy that I think we don't want to really admit. I think privacy is over. I think it died. I think it died with our cell phones. They know what you're doing. They don't. This is my thing about Facebook. People always say, I think Facebook is listening to me. It advertised this thing that me and my friend were talking about. My friend got this cool candle, and then I started seeing advertisements for the candle. Guess what? Facebook doesn't need to listen to you. Facebook doesn't need to have audio microphones on listening to you. Facebook knows that your friend visited, and your friend just purchased a candle from a store online, and that candle arrived at a certain day because they have cookies that track the shipping and the cookies that track the store. And now you and your phone, your friend's phone and your phone are in the same place. So you're having like a get together or something, and they're telling you about their cool new candle they just bought. And now you go home and on your laptop, hey, look, there's an advertisement from Facebook for that candle. The privacy's over. It's dead. It's gone.
And to get back to the school things just a little bit, the privacy will always be tied with morality. And when you don't have privacy, you just turn immoral or amoral. You don't turn immoral, you just turn amoral. It's just neutral. And that scares the shit out of me.
Yes, yeah, it is. It's because the only reason you don't do stuff is because you're being watched.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I worry about that too. And then
Elf on the Shelf. Did you ever hear about what happened with Elf on the Shelf? You know what I'm talking about? The little Christmas. The parents would put it on the shelf, right? And a lot of parents started noticing that their children, their 8 and under kind of kids, their behavior got very creepy. Whenever they're in the room with that little elf, they started acting like someone was watching them. And so the parents started deciding, we're not going to do this anymore. It was cute for a little bit, but now our 4-year-old is acting like they're being spied on, and they can't move or do anything because the elf is going to tell on them. And it's the whole proof that we have about, cameras mitigate behavior and change how you interact with the world. I mean, you have an inanimate object that has no camera built into it that has the same power. So
the premise of a camera. Yeah. I mean, it's Jane Goodall and the apes, and like observing the apes and like how like they're different under observation. That only on overdrive when you are telling the observed thing that they are under observation, they can understand that. I mean, you could argue that my cats will behave differently if I put a camera on them. I'm not so sure about that, right? But if they could understand they were all being watched, they'd be acting differently. If you told me that I was on camera, I'd act differently, and I'd be on edge. And to your point, Brian, a more stressed society. And it's a low-level stress that no one even's able to articulate because it's just the air you breathe. You're just constantly in a surveillance state all the time, and you don't even know what it's like to not be watched. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that this is bad, and I think you're ultimately right, Lindsay, that like the privacy thing, like we lost the battle. I remember after the NSA leaks came out, there was this thing called the Restore the Fourth rally. I've mentioned this a few times in the show. If you've heard this before, I'm sorry. But the Restore the Fourth rally happened down here in Dallas. And Jordan and I, who used to host a show here, we went out to this thing, and there were me and him, and then about 10 other people, and like 5 or 6 of them were just like anonymous nerds, like with like the Guy Fawkes masks on, and like there was no movement. And yeah, Occupy Wall Street had gotten suction, but the privacy stuff has not gotten but a fraction of what like many kind of more economically motivated left issues have. So I'm with you, Linz. I think unless the left started giving like a mondo shit about this in a way that we have not seen in a very, very long time. They
There
could.
is a way.
Okay.
The way because the Fourth Amendment is often what is cited in terms of the Black Lives Matter community of just assuming that someone is guilty. You know, you haven't had a warrant. You're Breonna Taylor. You're busting down her door. She didn't have the, any knowledge of, a warrant being out for anybody, or the no knock thing is very anti Fourth Amendment. Just shooting without cause or due cause is very Fourth Amendment. And I think if you could tie it back to some sort of, if you could tie the technology into the racial and social aspect of the Fourth Amendment issue, you could probably garner more support. Otherwise, it just sounds like tech nerds being really. Why are you so nervous about your Ring camera?
Yeah, no, I know. Meanwhile, they freak out over Section 230 and net neutrality, and they're like, "It's gonna be the end of the internet if we lose net neutrality."
Yeah.
But like, I mean, like we're literally building a panopticon under our noses right now with millions of cameras going out every year. Don't worry about that. Why are you so paranoid?
I think if you make it a social justice issue, you can get more answers.
One angle I was hoping on the right is that you could convince the right that they can take your guns through the Fourth Amendment.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's true. It totally is.
This seems like an issue where you have to get everyone on board, because at any point, if you don't have everyone on board, the Second Amendment.
This is a super easy
is
one
always
to
around the
wedge.
corner.
This is a very super easy one to wedge. If you want to be tough on crime, you can make a tough on crime argument that Ring doorbells allow us to catch more criminals. And isn't that a wonderful thing? So you could take anyone who might be a right winger on some issues, but is worried about the feds and the cops and all that, like the Ruby Ridge types. Those people you can scare off by going, "Well, be tough on crime." If you get rid of this, it'll make it harder for us to do our job and keep you safe. And people like that. I mean, to Lindsay's point, like if I was a single woman living alone in the city, I'd have a Ring doorbell. I'd have several cameras.
I wish I could have one now. I mean, I don't know how to tell you that I can be morally ambiguous about this, but also still give Amazon my money every month.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it because look, I don't have. With certain applied uses, I have absolutely no problem with it. My position is not let us smash all the Ring doorbells and burn them like disco records in arenas. My point is more let us really consider what is and isn't proper usage of Ring doorbell footage, and let us also seriously consider that it's in all of our interest to figure out what those limits are.
Well, I'm going to break you of that Luddite distinction some other day, because it's inappropriately used, just as a whole, not just you. But
Wow.
In my opinion, if you have a drone that has some sort of weapon on it, you don't need a Ring doorbell anymore.
Well, okay, so I don't necessarily worry about the weaponized drones thing, but here's what I will say. I worry about, it depends on air drones, not so much. I worry about like weaponized Boston Dynamics cop guys. Like the mobile men who are like run only like they'll not have like nightsticks and they're like be able to club your ass.
I think that's what's interesting is I don't know if I'd rather that technology be with the government and the police force or with the public.
And
which makes me want to not have it at all because
what I'm saying is
it's
inevitable that the government gets it. It's just I had a quick debate real quickly with this guy yesterday about like Section 230. He's like, what do you think about big tech limiting speech on the internet or whatever? And I was like, well, the reality is we got to wind this back. There are really only two options. There's either companies get to control this situation or government gets to control this situation. And in the case of the Ring Doorbells thing, it's even worse. And this is kind of what I wanted to get at with the framing is that inevitably government is coming to get their foot in the door on this shit. They want to. They know it's useful to them. The one that I think, the article in here that I think is the funniest was the FBI is worried that the Ring Doorbells are being used to spy on the police. So
kind of fun. You've kind of democratized a problem.
Yes, but it's also illustrative of how big this problem is at this point. Hacked documents suggest that the FBI is concerned some people may be using Ring or other smart doorbell devices to watch the police. Papers described a 2017 incident where some remotely watched live footage of the police preparing to serve a search warrant. That was found online by The Intercept, among other hacked documents. The hacked documents, known as Blue Leaks, were stolen from 250 police websites. This is the other problem, is once the cops get this information, it's a new target, an opportunity target for hackers who many times are able to go into government systems, and government systems many times are laughably dated. I'll tell you, getting us kind of wrap everything up here, State of Texas's websites for any number of things, they are all a decade old. The emergency management website, circa 2011 was what the copyright said when I looked at it this week. Texas Workforce Commission, same thing. Like all these designs are super old and therefore very vulnerable to being taken over by hackers. So, much like the NSA thing, one of the big problems, it's not necessarily that there's a man searching through everything and making a file on Christopher Brino and, I know I talked to Mrs. O'Mardian, his second grade teacher, and I got the shit on him now. And it's not necessarily that. The problem is having it all there in the first place because anyone can go in and start the file at any time, not necessarily just the G-man.
That's fun. I like to think about my FBI file. Kind of wonder.
It's mostly going to be guilt by association with me. Like
it's all my
y'all. Yeah, you all are fucked. I'm sorry.
They got me under a file of just people who really hate Ted Cruz and they got to keep an eye on. I swear, I won't do anything. I just really want to flick him on the nose, just like you would a dog. Just like, no, don't do that anymore.
All right, guys. Final thoughts here before we wrap it up. I think we've done plenty of time here.
Final thoughts. Ted Cruz sucks.
Ted Cruz sucks.
Make sure that you are prepared to take the day off if you get the second dose of the vaccine. And GameStop stocks.
They're not coming back.
Made me sad.
Yeah.
Really made me sad.
You're not gonna get it to juice up a second time to 400. I'm sorry.
Last thought on surveillance. Talking about counter surveillance. There are actually devices that normal everyday citizens can purchase now where you look through the device and you can see if there is a camera spying on you in a room.
I want one of those.
Yeah, so before. There you go.
Oh, cool.
You need them in hotels now, I think, because they're just hiding them.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, like, that really is the point. Is that, like, we really have been assembling a panopticon. And the ad hoc nature, I think, for some people would say it as reassuring. I think it's almost more scary because,
you should
look into.
Final. I just was thinking about this. Airbnbs, if you go to them, there's probably a secret camera, and you signed an agreement when you booked that Airbnb that it's okay. So you might want to definitely get one of those little things if you use Airbnb a lot to check to see where the cameras are because they might be in your bedroom. and or where you're undressing or something like that.
And you might
it's
want to cover them
totally
up.
Fair.
Yeah, you might want to cover those up. Yeah. So, anyways, people, be vigilant on the cameras thing. Hopefully, we got people thinking. If you've got thoughts about like the privacy stuff and how that works, get at me at DWATG if you want to watch the entire video version of this show. And all shows, sub up at patreon.com/DWATG. If you're like, I don't know, I would like to watch one of these video things, but I'm not going to pay you $1 a show, Novembrino, no matter how many times you ask. Well, you're in luck, pal. Go to youtube.com and search for Don't Worry About the Government. We have a YouTube channel. You can see old episodes of Don't Worry About the Government, a month and older, are now available for watching if you want to watch old episodes of Don't Worry About the Government. And of course, like we're trying to work in the free side clip thing too, so there's a few of those up there as well if you want to go and check that out. And I'm on Twitter at DWATG. Patreon page is patreon.com/DWATG. Brian, where are you on the internet?
I'm at Postman RTs, at Postman Retweets.
Lindsay Duke.
I am at Lindsay_007.
And I'm on Discord now too. I'm noodling around with that. So if Discord's a thing that you are doing, you can follow me. What is my name? Like that. I'm Nov, Nov, number 7574. So go and look for that. Add me on Discord. I feel like I'm missing out key Discord lingo that makes me seem old and dated. But I'm gonna live. I'm gonna persevere. And until the next one, bye-bye.